Talofa lava and welcome to this webinar in Samoa as part of the global Stockholm+50 consultation. My name is Lilo Mayava Filfili Josefa. I am the Global Environment Facilities Small Grants Program Sub-Regional National Coordinator at UNDP Samoa Multi-Country Office and moderator for today's webinar. This is one of the webinars in a 7-part series and will capture the community and faith-based organizations' perspective about progress on sustainable development. I would like to begin this session by inviting Fionga Lepale Osisimanu, the Assistant Resident Representative for Environment and Climate Change at UNDP, for a presentation on Stockholm+50 and Spark Blue. Now, Fionga Lepale.
Yeah, thank you, moderator. Distinguished guests, members of communities-based organizations and faith-based organizations, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure on behalf of the UNDP resident representative to welcome you all to the Stockholm+50 National Consultations webinar with community-based organizations and faith-based organizations. Talofa lava and welcome. The Stockholm+50 will commemorate the 50 years since the convening of the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment and celebrates 50 years of global environment action by recognizing the importance of multilateralism in tackling the Earth's triple planetary crisis: climate, nature, and pollution. The national consultations will be an education to raise awareness about the importance of protecting our planet. It is an opportunity for members of the community, businesses, organizations, development partners, and government to dialogue on issues relevant to overcome the triple planetary crisis as we see it now: the climate change, of nature and biodiversity loss, and of pollution and waste. The outcomes of these national dialogues will contribute to the international meeting to be held in June this year at Stockholm, Sweden, entitled Stockholm+50, a healthy planet for the prosperity of all. It is our responsibility, it is our opportunity, which will be held during the week of World Environment Day. The Stockholm+50 also aims to help accelerate the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals during the decade of action, including through sustainable recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic as we experience now in our small country. We trust that these consultations will spark interesting dialogues and see how we can best address critical environment issues in Samoa, and hopefully to inspire a younger generation to take these resolutions further into a better future. With that, I would like to thank our panelists for this afternoon for taking time away from your busy schedule to partake in this dialogue. We thank you for your commitment to seeking solutions and better ways to address what was lacking in the past 50 years since the first UN conference on the environment, particularly from a community's perspective. I wish the best for the dialogue today, this afternoon, and I encourage everyone who is joining online to partake in this consultation. Please ask questions and refer to our panel, or you can refer it to our moderators, whether it's during the dialogue or through the state of the Planet Global Survey, which will be shared by our moderator. Manuia teleta to waso, manuia teleta to whātātanana. So if one may, manuia.
As mentioned by Lepale in his statement, the Stockholm+50 commemorates the 1972 United Nations Conference on the Human Environment and celebrates 50 years of global environmental action. For this session, we have 3 exemplary community leaders and with some thought-provoking questions to guide today's conversation. Before we start the discussions, I would like to share some housekeeping rules. All the questions from participants will be answered during the Q&A session towards the last part of the webinar. All participants are requested to type in their questions in the Q&A chat box. If you have questions for a specific speaker, please mention it along with the question. We will take all the questions together at the end of the session. At around 3:10 p.m., views on the state of the planet. This webinar also has a sign language translator from NOLA. So we're very grateful and thankful to our partner, NOLA, for providing a translator. So we kindly request all the speakers to speak loudly, clearly, and slowly for our translator to be able to translate well. In the same spirit, we also ask our online participants to please be respectful of each other and use respectful language. Thank you, and moving forward, it is an honor and privilege to introduce our three esteemed speakers. Our first speaker for today is none other than Afionga Sua Julia Warwick, who's the country director at ADRA Samoa. For the past 12 years, Sue has been the country director at ADRA Samoa, which is a faith-based organization started by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, has the church's main humanitarian arm. ADRA has been doing a lot of good work in Samoa, and recently they have donated food supplies and hygiene kits locally, valued at the amount of 65,000 tala to the police and fire emergency services authority in recognition of their work during the pandemic. Thank you, Sua, for joining us. Our second speaker is Afionga Tuatangaloa Joe Annandale, best known as a high chief from Botasi Falealili. Tuatangaloa is also the director, owner of Sinalei Reef Resort and Spa. He's also the founder of Botasi Development Trust, a very well-known and successful local community-based organization. And with the help of his team of Matai and leaders, Tuatangaloa has been instrumental in promoting and doing good work for this country, civil society. He's a sporty person, he loves singing and playing ukulele. Finally, our third speaker is Fionga Leataualesa Atuatasi Katifa Price, who is one of our small grants program grantee. She has served and supported communities across Samoa for 20 plus years of her life. She also worked in the Samoa umbrella of non-government organization through the Women's Care Environment. She's an experienced leader and project coordinator who's committed to the development of projects in her community. She also initiates positive changes for the people in Siumu. She's currently the project treasurer for the Siumu Development Committee funded by SGP. And she's a former board council member of early childhood education, as well as a board member of Sanko. Thank you, Lea Taulisa, and thank you to Tuatangaloa for joining us today. We are very delighted to have you. Just a quick heads up for the speakers on the flow of our sessions. Since we are joining remotely, especially Tuatangaloa and Sua, I will try my best to ensure we can hear each other and compensate for the cues we usually get during in-person discussions. To do this, and in the interest of time, when I ask a question, I will nominate one of you speakers to respond. In case I have not nominated any of you, but you would like to add to the discussion, please feel free to raise your hand using the prompt function, and we will loop you in. Now, without further ado, let us start with our first leadership dialogue, which is reflecting on the urgent need for actions to achieve a healthy planet and prosperity of all. The first question is Julia Warwick. How can we restore and regenerate a positive relationship with nature? If you can list one good practice, which if we scale it up, can create a healthy planet. Thank you.
At ADRA, we've been focused on developing our communities through different programs. And we like to focus on, keeping our planet healthy. A planet that is healthy is for a healthy people. And we focus on tree planting, reforestation. We like to encourage people to keep the oxygen flowing. We also look at food security. And by food security, we can also work on improving the land developing the land. And food security provides, not only nutrition, but it also provides an income generating activity for people, which strengthens their resilience as well. So to keep the planet clean and healthy, we work as a participatory approach, getting all the community, all members of the community participating in all the trainings, in all the activities. So it's a collective effort from the community to work together.
Thank you very much, Sua, for the clear clarification and answer. Tangaloa and Lea Tau, from your own community perspectives, can you also share one good practice each along the same question? If you can scale up towards contributing to a healthy planet, whoever wants to go first, maybe Lea Tau.
I'm a great advocate for education. And during implementation of our project, which was waste management, we have found out that there is very limited knowledge of the people on how to care for waste management. So I would push for educational programs, starting with an early stage initiative to educate societies with the right mindset to understand and build the morale of our youth to love and appreciate our environment. A set educational curriculum that will ensure learning outcomes that have major positive impact to the environment. The problems identified, hence this project, people lack understanding and knowledge on waste management. Poor, unhygienic practices was a great risk to health as well as the environment, sea, and the air. Deforestation for settlement and farming also plays a major impact. Therefore, to realize these impacts, we can find solutions based on people's behaviors and mindset. And if we engage in this approach of continuously influence our educational curriculum, I am assured the fight for action will be executed.
Thank you very much, Leato Alisa Totasi, for that very useful and valuable contribution. Tangaloa, would you like to add good practice from your community experience? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I've observed respectful practice by allowing my women colleagues to speak first. As we say, women are always first, and it should be first. They should be first in everything that we do. And of course, I would just like to I just want to make that point, because in my community, the women are the ones who really, the men should be providing the muscle. But I tell you what, the women in my community are the ones that really, they're the movers and shakers. So hence my respect for them and giving them the chance to speak first.
So much. Thank you, Giancarlo, for the
But, and I won't say joking aside, because I'm serious about that. I'm deadly serious when I make that statement. In my community, of course, it's no different to any other community. We are being affected by climate change, and I just like, just for a moment, to congratulate the United Nations for coming 50 years this far, and have done so much. But then, the United Nations can do so much, and then it's left up to the communities and to the countries to carry the project through to protect our environment. And it I have to be truthful here. I think as the people that are living on this earth, we've let ourselves down and everybody else down in the manner in which we have cared for or not cared for our communities and our environments, and we're paying the price now. Certainly in Samoa, we've had cyclones over the years, and every day we read about disasters and dramas in other countries, with countries that never had floods before are having floods, and so on. I mean, we read about it and we hear about it. And here in Samoa, it's been the same. I live right on the sea, and in fact, my front deck sits over the sea, and I've noticed in the last 15 years since I've lived on the sea, the rise in sea levels and how it's impacting on the foreshore that I live on. And even here where I'm talking to you now from my resort here at Sinalei, the same applies. With the sea, sea levels are rising all the time, and probably another 10 years time, I'm going to have to shift my resort further up the hill. But I'm blessed here in that it's a bit of a cliff and I live high up. But yeah, those are the realities of today. We are being impacted, but how are we trying to deal with it in our little community? We're blessed in that we're right next door to Tongtonginga, which is the largest forest reserve. In fact, the first forest reserve to have been established in the Pacific, and it's many hundreds of acres, which is a lot of greenery in that. And we're blessed in that we're in partnership with Conservation International and Samoa Conservation Society, who have engaged the villages close to the reserve, Sa'anga, which is a sub-village of that Atuatasi belongs to, and of course there's my village and Salelua and Potasi. So we've been part of this tree planting program, which has been very, very successful, because we've been able to use our young untitled men and women to go and listen to lectures about how important it is to conserve and preserve our environment. And then of course they are taught how to plant trees, and they are told the whole story and theory behind carbon and all of that. And this has been very useful. We've just completed one program, and I believe I hear from Samoa Conservation Society, they've been given finance for another program, which is great, which will go for another 6 months. But it's a tree planting program, and my gosh, my young men and women from my community, as the same as in Sa'anga, from Sa'anga, they've planted several thousand new plantings, tree plant, our native trees. And in addition to that, I've been blessed again in having a program, the seasonal work program, where I've used that as a platform to deliver the message, the environment message to our people who go away, to the point that I've got them planting trees as well. In fact, if you want to go away to pick apples and to earn a good income, to help your family, you have to plant 12 trees before you go, and that calculations have been made that will cover their trip on the plane and returning. And of course, all of them now have cars, and they pollute the air with their vehicles. So the calculation has been made that the carbon offset can be established by planting 12 trees. So every time they go and come back, they plant 12 trees. So over the last 3 or 4 years, we've planted over 5,000 trees. And but it's become a very effective way or platform for delivering the environment message. And I've used that same platform for delivering the healthy living message, because trying to change mindsets about eating and exercise and all of that. So yeah, but again, like I say, I'm lucky in a way in that I have these platforms in delivering this message, because they really listen. And they listen because, you know, I think a lot of them listen because they know if they don't listen, they don't go away to pick apples. And if they don't do these things, so it's
Yeah, that's true.
yeah, so, but that's what we do. And apart from, you know, the village meetings and trying to deliver the message about sand mining and all of that, you know, being careful with their fishing habit, you know, methods and all the rest of it. And we have our marine protected area, of course, and we have our tonga tongo, you know, we have our mangroves project as well. These are all good platforms for delivering the message about a clean environment and in a sustainable, you know, environment. So I'm sorry I've taken a lot of your time, but I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Taitele lava tuatanga loa for that enriching and meaningful contribution. Yes, I can certainly agree with what you mentioned about the tree planting project implemented by your village, and also in collaboration with Conservation Society and other partners, which is one of our successful funded projects through UNDP. SGP. Moving on. The next question is, what are some of the actions your group can take towards a healthy planet? And to take these actions forward, what policies, systems do you need in place? I repeat, what are some of the questions, or what are some of the actions your group can take towards a healthy planet? And to take these actions forward, what policies and systems do you need to be in place? Thank you.
Ladies first again.
Yeah, okay, ladies first. That's what I was kindly included.
Oh, no, you know.
So,
I believe that policies since Stockholm 50 and country, the whole wide world has been working on it to improve as well as minimize the affectation to the planet. But what I have found out during implementation of our project, the message and information has yet to reach the grassroots level. This is the problem, I think. How we can take and make our people understand in regards to the policies and structures in place. I think what we hope for is a simplified approach on how we can get this information to the people. The level of literacy is very low. And it's a matter of how this message will reach the people. I think as the leaders of our groups has a very hard task to make the people really understand on their responsibilities as well as the opportunities given so that they can work in harmony for a better health practice, healthy planet. I don't think there is more in terms of policies and structures to be in place. It's just a matter of how we deliver and make our people at grassroots level understand about these policies and structures.
Thank you, Leah Tolisa, to Tasi for that very useful contribution. Over to you, Sua.
Yeah, I think we've found that, and I agree with what Leato is saying, we can set out all the policies, but it's getting down to where the people's needs are and what their focus is. That's what's important. You know, I'll give you an example. We can go and hold training for disaster preparedness, for, you know, COVID-19 hygiene practices, and we'll set our own policies to guide us in delivering of our projects. And yet it's what the people need, you know, what they feel is right for them that would work. And we've found that if we work with the village communities, and I go back to what Tratangaloa is saying, it's very important to start working with your communities, your churches, you know, your youth groups, your women's groups, to get them all together. And once you can develop that understanding amongst them, you know, the understanding of what the need is for them and how they should look at their neighbor to see how they can all work together, you know, for a better community, for a better way to happen. And we've found that once we identify and confirm the needs of the communities, then we need to hold consultation with them, because that's where you get the approval. That's where you get them to put that stamp on it, to know that they accept you, that they know what you're saying is something they believe in going. Then we look at the resources, you know, put our policies in place, but how do we help them? How do we deliver those policies? So we look at all the resources and funding, what's available and what we can offer. Once we can offer, then you see a more positive response from the community. They know there's a hope, there's hope for them that they can work for. So we try to deliver training, awareness programs, you know, development programs. But if we can't get them to understand and accept it as part of their way of life, then we work in vain. And we've found that to encourage that economic strength amongst the communities, they have to be working together. And we go back to our participatory approach that ADRA has been working on, and putting that together with the policies that we put in place, then it might look like, you know, there's hope for everyone.
After Lava Sua for that very meaningful and good example provided. Tratangaloa, would you like to add?
Thank you. You know, we all know that habits are very, you know, take a long time to you know, our old habits take a long time to change. Mindsets that are somewhat generational, that have been passed down through time, I see to be a huge challenge here in a lot of things, be it the environment, be it health. And I've found from experience that it's, you know, you can talk to your blue in the face about something, but if, like Sua says, if you know, if it doesn't somehow soak in, and people consider it to be important enough for them to change their lifestyles and their mindsets, then we've got a real battle on our hands. So what I've thought that, you know, and I've gone down to the grassroots. I've gone in some of the programs that we've started. We've gone to the children, down to preschoolers and primary, and try and work through there. For example, I've introduced a free lunch program into our preschool, the Manumalo preschool and primary school at Kokasi. Again, trying to, and in doing that, there's a story behind, or there is a mission, a message behind it all about good health and all the rest. And we've introduced a physical education program as well. Of course, I should add very quickly that unfortunately the lockdowns and the COVID, has affected all of that. But that was, we started it. Again, trying to get that message to the children, and so that they can grow up having heard that message, and hopefully, they can see how it's changed their lives, and that it's a bottom up sort of an approach rather than talking to the parents, because the parents are they're set in their ways. So I believe that this is I would like to suggest that it is an important approach to trying to change things. Go down to the kids and work up through them, and let them, during their impressionable years, at school and all that. I think there's a much better approach, or you stand a much better chance of getting change, eventual change in mindsets and habits. We behind our school now, we're developing a school garden, and again, a good platform for delivering the message about healthy food, planting vegetables, and then the kids participate in this, and then they see this going into the food that they're eating, which is free. And then it's, they start seeing the results. So that's what we're doing or trying to do, but with mixed success. But we feel that it's worth persevering with it, and it's and we're going to continue with it when the schools come back into the kids come back to school. Thank you.
Thank you, Tuatara Loa. Moving along, because we have our last question for this session. So the last question is, how can we safeguard the rights of people and nature, including, among others, indigenous peoples and local communities, women, youth, and future generations? Maybe, Sua, you want to start off with this final question for this?
I've always said that in Samoa, there's no prejudice against women, and I in the village communities, it's up to you to how you hold your place. And it's like that too with the youth. A lot of people say they may be oppressed, but yet they do have a voice. They do have a voice in the village whānau through the head of their family. And so working with women and youth, they are part of a structured society, and when you go to the village communities and you have the authority and the discipline approach to, and that's the way we could look at also encouraging to work towards a healthier and better planet, because you know what it's like in the village council. That's where the supreme authority comes from. Then it moves all the way down the ranks, through the mailefono to the women, to the untitled young men. They all know their place, but if they can all come together, then that's where the strength will be in moving forward. I find that we work best, like for example, when we're doing livelihoods for food security, we encourage them also to plant around the riverbanks so that you're also safeguarding the rivers and water streams, so that you're saving water as well. So, you find there that there's a collaboration between the food security, saving water, and helping to save the planet.
Thank you, Sua. Law, would you like to add before we move on to the next second dialogue question?
Well, I believe laws and regulations have been passed for this purpose, to safeguard the rights of people and nature. I found out that taking this out to the people, I mean, the law in place, the penalties on abusing, and how to dispose of that, it's not there. People, even myself, I did not know that burning rubbish is a no-no, and there is a penalty there. So we need to make people understand on what is in place right now. There is a great improved awareness campaigns at grassroots level for this information. The majority of the country lives in own cultural land, and the rights of indigenous people are safeguarded under the Constitution. So in order that we can address this and safeguard our rights, basically we need to look at what is most appropriate to the land, to our living, and the health of all, contribute to a healthy planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Law, would you like to add?
Mayaba, I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty here. Hearing what Leata was just said, and of course what Sua was saying a little earlier. But so maybe I should pass on that one. Just continue with the conversation, and I'm working on trying to reconnect.
Okay, thank you very much, Law. I think it's fitting to move on to the next dialogue leadership question. COVID-19 has erased a lot of progress made on SDGs, but it also gave us a sort of reset button. So for this dialogue, we will discuss about actions that could be taken for achieving a sustainable and inclusive recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. So for this dialogue, the first question is for you, Law. I hope you don't mind kicking off. The first question is, what are the most promising, sustainable and inclusive COVID-19 recovery practices currently being applied by civil society groups at individual and community level? How could we scale them up?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can.
Yeah.
More importantly, can you see me?
I don't see your handsome young face.
Yeah. No, it's COVID has we all know has been very challenging, but it's as catastrophes do, they bring the best and the worst out of us. And I think what COVID has done, certainly it's brought the best out of people. The fact that, it's about survival, it's about picking yourself up, changing your ways and your ideas and the way you live your life. I think I've always been pushing, for wellness and good health, as you know, Mayava, through our, running years of running together and marathons and whatever. But it's truly, I've noticed a lot of people becoming more conscious of their weight and their health, and that's certainly and of course in a part of probably the most important part of wellness and good health is a healthy clean environment. That those things go together. Without a clean environment, you don't have a good healthy life. Truly, your body just slowly gets affected by the environment, you know, the poor air that you breathe and all of that. So COVID has brought to the fore a lot of these issues. And I think I see and I read and I hear a lot, there's a lot more consciousness out there about which is, I think, a very positive thing. So yeah, it's, you know, and of course, the government rightfully has been very protective, and we must applaud the efforts that have been made there to protect Samoa. But COVID is here now, and we've got to learn to come to terms with it at all levels of our lives. So, and I see some very positive things coming out of it. Negatives aside, but positives. The government is talking now about reopening our borders, which is great, because it does allow us businesses like ours to reopen and get on with it, and hopefully businesses will come and experience and see for themselves what we're doing here in Samoa to you know, to survive. Thank you.
Thank you, Tuatalo. My next question is to Leata Atuatasi. How do we ensure that all communities can benefit from opportunities that come from recovery after COVID-19 so that it is sustainable? How do we ensure all communities can benefit from opportunities that come from recovery after COVID-19 so it is sustainable?
But current and pre-existing practices need to be changed. That I would say that solidifying and enforcing the standards of building houses and homes to approve standards set out by the Ministry of Works, Transport and Infrastructure for sustainable homes and buildings. Investing in upskilling our people to build according to approved standard and professional codes. Most probably, the reason homes are not safe from flooding is because people choose to build on sentimental attachments to land and do not respect engineering codes and recommendations. For example, the Lilata area has now been resettled as if there was never a major flooding. A versatile shopping center that offers services to thousands to hundreds of customers, risking safety and the livelihood of the people. If we can encourage people to be aware of the consequences of their choices, I think that will be a very good approach to recovery pre-existing practices. And also the governments in terms of the inspectors in regard to buildings and homes, as well as the bridges and everything, that sort of thing. To be on board on the monitoring, inspections according to the regulation. I think that needs to be enhanced for the debate forward. Thank you.
For that contribution. So, Julia, in your opinion, what are the decent green jobs of the future from your perspective, and what are the new skills needed for the people in the communities? This is our third question for this dialogue. What are the decent green jobs of the future from your perspective, and what are the new skills needed for the people in the communities?
Sorry, Lil, I just missed the last part of the question. Can you just say it, please?
Okay. I'll repeat the two questions. What are the decent green jobs of the future from your perspective, and what are the new skills needed for people in the communities?
Okay. As a faith-based organization, our actions are limited to a fair extent because of resources. But when you talk about jobs going forward, tasks, then we look at like, reducing the effect on the environment, by conservation of water also to reduce the effect on that, working with, planting more trees. We look at food security so that farming methods are in place to keep the soils fertile and healthy. We look at good nutrition to sustain healthy lifestyles and reduce mortality, and also reduce the non-communicable diseases that are rampant in Samoa right now, to educate for awareness and development, and to build for, better lifestyles. I don't know if you're aware, but EDRA's doing a lot of work with governments, helping vulnerable families to build better hygienic dwellings. And we've also introduced hygiene training for cleanliness and for raising the standard of life within the families. But, we also have to work together to develop national pathways, by healthy and sustainable food and land systems. And that needs a clear understanding of what's going on. And we also need action to support that from the businesses and society. So we believe that we should provide a healthy, nutritious, affordable and accessible food supply, food systems, so that we leave no one behind. And also to avoid food from being lost or wasted, which means more education and more awareness. Because food challenge has become more complex than climate change. With COVID-19, before it impacted, there was fear when we went to deliver the trainings and projects. We found there was fear of the unknown, fear of this dreadful pandemic that was sweeping the world. But now that it has impacted, and now that there's feedback from the communities feeling it's not as bad as what they thought, they're starting to fall back into a laid back, mentality about the COVID-19. We find that's a new fear coming in for us humanitarian workers, frontliners. We find that they feel that it's not the dreaded, fatal disease they were all expecting. And so now they think that they don't have to focus so much on it, and they don't have to be more concerned about it, because they think that it might be just like the flu or something else like that. So that's another fear that's coming into. But going forward for COVID-19, we find that it has to be a national approach now. We know now that there's still many who have not been vaccinated, and we want to all we see the advertisements, we see the promotions, and yet we still find that when there's a new surge of the numbers going up, then you see a new surge of people coming into to the vaccination sites. So I think our people wait until something happens, then they're motivated to go into action. But going forward now, that's the way that as a faith-based, as a humanitarian organization, we can take it step by step and hope that, we can make an impact with the trainings, with the education, with the practical ways that we can teach, another way of getting things done. Tight.
Title level for that very useful and excellent input. Tuatara Joe, would you like to add, because I understand you have a lot of experience in this area as well?
Yes, I'd just like to, to say, there's a Samoan saying, if tapai li ofina wa mulima, which means, of course, that, you know, we take so much for granted until it happens, and then we're in a panic. And I think much of that is happening or has happened in Samoa over, you know, some of these dramatic events, pandemic for one. And so it's about learning the hard way, and I think this is what a lot of our people, you know, they start panicking about their health when it's too late, when they're on a dialysis machine or whatever. And I've always said this, and right or wrong, that, you know, climate change is a huge threat to Samoa and to the world, no doubt. But I believe that the biggest threat to the welfare of our people here is the lifestyle that a lot of people have adopted. Biggest threat to their lives and to their well-being. But then I'd just like to applaud what the SUA and ADRA are doing, because my village, Potasi, has been the recipient of much of their help in all the areas that she has explained. Food security, and, you know, a host of other things, and it's been great. Thank you, SUA, for your help in that regard. Potasi is very appreciative of all that you have done for us. But unless some of us, you and us and all of us who are in this discussion, go out there and, you know, and bravely do what we do, and then nothing happens. But yeah, so I'll leave it there. But I just like to say that what I see happening, like the likes of ADRA and others doing in, you know, here in Samoa, it's to be applauded, because it is working. Some communities are responding very positively to and and my village is one example. On health, hygiene, and all that, we've done a census of every single family, done a census of who's there and what they do and all the rest, and looked at all their living conditions. And then with that information and that data, we feel that we now believe that we have a better idea of what the standards that our people are living in, so that we can go out there and find help for them. So that's part of what ADRA taught us to do. Thank you, SUA, and we appreciate that. Keep up the good work. Mahalo.
Hello, Tratalo, Leah Tolsa, would you like to contribute to this question and these jobs? Kids and green job.
I believe Ratanadoa and SUA has studied us.
Two sessions for a break. I think it's time to take a question from one of our participants while we still have some time for this session. If you can look at the chat, Tuatangaloa and SUA, but I'll read out the question from one of our participants. The role of Ali'i and Faipule women's committees, youth groups, is very critical in informing policy development and implementation strategies. Can you share some good examples and challenges? How have some projects facilitated this engagement with the community groups at a governance and implementation level? Are you able to see the question on the chat box, SUA and Tuatangaloa? Or do you want me to read it out again?
See, can you read it again? Because I can't see the question. Can you, Tuatangaloa?
No, I can't see the question, but I've heard it
Okay, I'll repeat it. The role of Ali'i and Faipule women's committees, youth groups, is very critical in informing development and implementation strategies. Can you share some good examples and challenges? How have some projects facilitated this engagement with the community groups at a governance and implementation level?
Okay.
So it's basically asking.
I'm happy to start. I perhaps, Sua, would you like to speak first, or shall I say something? Hello? Can you hear me?
I
think that's all.
can just hear you now. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes. Yeah.
So, do you want to start on that, or do you want me to?
Okay, well, I'll start. I'll start with the challenges. The first challenge for the community that I live in, and the community that I came into, was one. It's a community that's very traditional in its ways. The Ali'i and Faipule is different from the Komitio Tumaita, Komitio Tina, and then you have the Awaluma. And they all kept their, there were strict boundaries between those groupings. It didn't take long for me to realize that, while this has worked for many generations, the concern is that there is no dialogue. The women did their thing, and of course, how the men found out about it was when they got home, and the women would inform them and that sort of thing. But we've since, that's been the challenge, and there's been an effort on my part and the part of others to change that once a month, the Komitio Tina and the Ali'i and Faipule come together under the same roof and talk. And we broke the ice about 2 months ago. We brought everybody together, the Ali'i and Faipule on one side and the Komitio Tina on the other, and we had all the Awaluma, the Aumanga, and all there as well. In our Memorial Hall, Sua, the one that you so kindly helped us renovate and make more functional for these types of things, meetings to have. So, and we made history, because that's the first time that's ever happened. And it was an amazing day. It was an amazing day. And the dialogue, and the decisions that were made, and it was, of course, it had to be, controlled and all that. But it was a milestone, and that was the first time that this has ever happened, and that everybody was given a chance to speak. There were some anxious moments, no doubt. Some of the Ali'i, some of the Matais felt that that they were being, that they were being, that the women were a bit too aggressive. But okay, it was managed, and we got through it. Very important decisions were made. But we've now decided that once a month we will come together and have that dialogue and discuss all the matters that need to be discussed, so that all parts of the village, are informed and of where we're going and what we want to do and achieve. So that, I feel, is a very positive thing that has happened in my community, and especially in a world that we live in now, where connectivity, working together, helping one another is so critical. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, pule in any community is very important. That's the vital essence of any community. And like you want an example, I'll give an example. In our village at Ngangaifu, there was a there was a big concern that our young people weren't going to develop the plantations. And so the Ali'i and Faipule you know, the Supreme Authority said, it's time everyone went to. And so they all went, and look, there was a big change. You know, even the women, and the young women, you know, the young entitlement, everyone went. And even though there was a big fear that there were wild pigs, they went because they were told that they had to go and develop the land. And there was a very successful program and the outcome. So I think that, in all our projects within the communities, like Tuatangalo has also mentioned, we found that it could only be successful, could only be sustained if the whole village is in agreement. And that agreement comes from accepting, you know, accepting the pule of the, you know, of the community. They accept that pule that guides them and encourages them and helps to ensure a positive development within the community.
Thank you very much, Sua and Tuatangalo, for those engaging and insightful contribution. We will now take a short break for this discussion and would like to invite participants to take up the State of the Planet Global Public Survey. The answers are unanimous, and the survey takes only 5 minutes to complete. The survey results will be taken to Stockholm+50 International Meeting to be held in Stockholm, Sweden on the 2nd to the 3rd of June this year. So thank you for participating in the Global Public Survey, and we'll be back after 10 minutes. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone, to the discussion. We would like to acknowledge and thank our Nunu Alofa translator, Noe, for the sign language and making this webinar more inclusive and accessible for Tailava. Moving on to dialogue, to our leadership dialogue 3. At the United Nations, we call this decade the decade of action. Like to accelerate the actions that achieve the environmental dimension of sustainable development. For this session, I would like to ask any of our 3 esteemed members to respond to the first question. What are the biggest challenges we are facing in implementing commitments to the SDGs and other environmental commitments? How do we create an enabling environment for delivery on the ground? I'll repeat the 2 questions for the speakers. What are the biggest challenges we are facing in implementing commitments to the SDGs and other environmental commitments? How do we create an enabling environment for delivery on the ground? Thank you. Leah Tawalsa, would you like to start? Yeah.
I try. That's how we will all agree to say that it's COVID, the pandemic and the lockdown that we have for 2 years.
Yeah.
And the challenges there, well, in terms of our health, our economy, and it was all on a standhold at the time. Economic recovery was another challenge for business and everyone in general. I've been working with the existing structures and Maasai Council to continue to drive existing programs and workshops related to the 230 agenda.
Thank you, Retawa. Sua?
Right, for COVID-19, the biggest challenge was the lockdowns, like Le'atawa said, and not being able to get out to the community, not being able to get into the groups of the numbers that we normally work with amongst the communities. And also with our staff, you know, testing positive every second day and going into isolation, it really affected our own program. But I think the overall challenge that would be facing commitments to environmental commitments is resources. And I'm sure everyone will agree, we all need resources to be able to deliver, you know, a well-based, quite a strong and full program. And to do that, we need the support and we need resources to do that. That is the biggest challenge of time.
Thank you, Sua. Tatangalo, would you like to contribute?
Muted, Tatangalo.
Tatangalo,
You're muted.
sorry, Tatanga, can you, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, of course, the pandemic would have to be the biggest challenge for us right now, because it's brought about restrictions in our movements, closed our borders and all of that. So it's affected the whole country and the whole world, in fact. But like I've alluded to it earlier in my earlier remarks about one of the biggest challenges, if not the biggest challenge to Samoa, is the general wellness of our people, or unwellness of our people. And you know, when a young 25 or 26-year-old dies because of some complication, you know, because of diabetes, brought about by diabetes, then I'm very, very concerned. And then, of course, that reinforces what I've been trying to say all the time. And I mean, those of us who are more health conscious will believe this. There's more people dying through NCDs and, you know, complications through lifestyle causes. Would have to agree that, you know, there are more deaths than here in Samoa than through the pandemic, through COVID. And our people are dying every day. This is a sad reality. And I feel that that's one of the big challenges that we have. And we need to make Samoa a healthier place. And of course, that's just not eating. It's not just about eating better and exercising and all that. It's about having a clean environment, like I said before. Sometimes, you know, as I walk around, I'm appalled at the lack of decent hygiene in some homes. There's no, again, another reality. And these are the sort of things that we need to address within our own small communities that we live in. And we say in our little village that, you know, that our journey is a journey of everybody going together, from the youngest to the oldest. We don't leave anybody behind in what we do. And this is the approach that we're taking. Like I said earlier, we're doing a census of every family, recording what they do, the jobs they do, who's educated, who's not, the children, number of children, how many people in the household, and you know, we do a census or a very critical assessment of their living standards, their bathrooms, their kitchens, and all of that. Again, to be better informed of what the real state of our families are in. And again, offering to, at the end of all that, being able to offer constructive. And maybe that's when I knock on Sua's door again and say, Sua, this is the state of my, is there some way that we can get some help, to improve, somebody's home or a kitchen or whatever. But this is how we're seeing it, or I'm seeing it, and this is how we're doing it. Again, trying to take everybody along with us on our journey. What's good enough for me should be good enough for anybody else in the village is the approach.
After our total and as well as Leah Taulisar for the meaningful and thoughtful contributions. Our second question is, what are the good practices and pathways that you would like to see scaled up to accelerate the implementation of the environmental dimension of sustainable development? What are the good practices and pathways that you would like to see scaled up to accelerate the implementation of the environmental dimension of sustainable development?
I still speak from the perspective and lessons learned throughout the implementation of our project in terms of laws and regulations in place to safeguard people as well as nature, and how to proceed in the work they do to the environment, to preserving the environment. Yeah, so I believe that to enforce legal fines and penalties in place to restrict people from continuing unlawful practices. Governments and donor agents to improve follow-up monitoring and evaluation on ongoing environmental projects in line with the decade of action to ensure success and sustainability.
Leah Taulisar. Sua, would you like to add on to this?
For good practices, and we need to walk the pathways to a healthy planet, for a healthy planet. And how do we do that? Well, we need to be guided, first of all, by the value of nature, to be able to create and foster an appreciation of the value of nature, of your environment around you, so that all the actions are focused on that. And when we move forward from the value of nature, we have to create resilience amongst our people so that they can respond in times of, according to climate change, they can create resilience in times of disaster, in times of illness, health issues. We want to make sure that we can create that strength, that personal strength, so that they can build up their resilience. And that can lead to address inequalities amongst the society, so that we keep on saying no one is left behind, so that there is a right and dignity for all in implementing our delivery to our communities. So how do we offer best practices? Well, if we go to the Bible, it says, train up a child in the way that we should start from a very early age in school. Education, like Leah Atawa has said, is very vital. It's an integral part of life. And if we can start at an early age, offering school programs, showing good practices, that's a good start. That can take to all levels of education. Then we move from that to youth groups. You know, there's so many lawlessness amongst some young people now. You know, and if you go up to visit the corrections places, you will find that there are so many juvenile offenders. And we need to work with youth groups so that the focus is on development, on positive development. And from the youth groups, we go to the adult groups where you have both the men and women, where we can help them, you know, create awareness, foster appreciation, so that it keeps the cycle moving, so that they in turn can pass on to future generations of how we should walk the pathway to a healthy planet. So if we go by those three core sectors, is value of nature, to create resilience and address inequalities, then we're on a good path to a good planet, a good healthy planet. Time.
Thank you very much, Sua. Dr. Alo, would you like to add to the?
No, I agree with everything that Leotoa and Sua have mentioned. Sadly, though, we're still up against many challenges, and those lofty ideals are great, and I couldn't agree with you more, Sua and Leotoa. But the reality is that if somebody doesn't have a job, and or families don't have a decent income, and they're in survival mode most of the time. Fortunately, and we're so lucky in that we have families in other countries that remit monies to us, and we have this seasonal work program that is bringing in so much help to our people. So grateful for that. But the reality is, if families are in survival mode, then truly, I mean, you put yourself in their shoes. It's very hard to be logical in your thinking about the environment or something else. Very hard. So it's easy for us to speak about these things because most of us, if not all of us, around this table, we have means. We've been well educated and so on and so forth. We have the means. But there are a lot of people out there that, and this is so. How do you answer? How do you solve that problem? Well, then I go back to a very fundamental thing that I've always, and which is really, and a lot of what I try to do or what we try to do are premised on, and that is providing employment, providing, somewhere where the people can earn, some decent money to be able to live, to build a decent house, and and answer all the, meet all the challenges in life that are out there. So yeah, and how does one get a decent job? Education, of course, and I think this has been covered from start, preschool age right through. It's really quite a mix of things, but how does one get that mix right in a country like ours, where we're much of what sustains us is what's given to us by our very generous neighbors and friends out in the world out there, including our own people in New Zealand, Australia, and everywhere else. So unfortunately, I'm not trying to paint a gloomy picture. What I'm trying to say is the realities of today, and it's not just today. It's something that is, it's been always been there. It's gotten more difficult now because of the greater population, and you have pandemics and a host of other challenges that have come into the mix. But it's not an easy. And if the more help that we can get from elsewhere to empower, to help us develop the different projects within our communities to raise awareness and get people employed and so that they have a meaningful then I think we've got a much better chance then of getting there. Thank you.
Of Taitele Tota Aloha and Sua for those very important contributions. Now, moving on to our final and last question for this session, and what capacities and technologies are needed from the private sector, from the civil society sector to improve human well-being in harmony with nature? What capacity and technologies are needed from the civil society, NGOs, and community and faith-based organizations to improve human well-being in harmony with nature? Sua, would you like to start?
Okay, thank you. You know, it's an ongoing job, ongoing task for humanitarian and NGOs and civil societies to work in this. And no one really has all the answers to this. You know, we've tossed it about this afternoon, but right now we're in a severe economic recess throughout the world and in the region also. And working from a faith-based organization, I can say that at times we get very cash-strapped. We need support. And that's where we look to international support. We look to outside sources to help us to be able to provide and build up those capacities and be able to provide better technology so that we can help people develop better skills. Like, for example, you know, you look at the health impacts now. We can't alone work from that point. We need help from the medical, the medical ministries. We need help from donors just to address the health impact. Right now, Samoa has been in physical isolation. In fact, most of the island nations in the region, sometimes we think it might be a double because there's been limited travel for travel freedom, and also it's been limited also in public burdens to carry for fa'alavelavas, for example. But then there's also an economic fallout that we have seen. And overall, you know, we tend to look at it that a regional crisis requires a regional response. And we can't look outside of our country right now because everyone else is in the same boat. Most of the countries are suffering from the pandemic. So what do? We have to help to rebuild our livelihoods and our lives within our own country. We have to look, that's what we have to look at right now. Look at our own resources around us, look at our environment so that we can help provide a development program that's within their reach. Like what Tsangalo said, it's very true. We can have all the technical programs and to offer it, but if they don't have their own resources to be able to respond, then we're not going anywhere. But if we can bring them all together, it's like a puzzle. Bring it all together in a neat package, working on the environment, so that we go back to what we said. We can look at food security, which would also increase health, and develop a better healthy lifestyle. We can go to good nutrition from food security. And then from that, we can go to education so that people are more aware and more appreciative. Then from that, we go to build a lifestyle that's according to what we need.
After Sua, for that thoughtful contribution. Tuatangaloa.
I believe so. I have covered almost everything that to the capacities and technologies. As we have learned throughout this lockdown, how we had to address the need for technology for school, for people at work. I think there is a need for education, the people on the technology and what's nowadays to counter the lockdowns and what we have come across. I can say to have a bottoms-up approach like what Tangaroa has said before, ensures grassroots development in terms of education. I still maintain that the key is educating the people, because education, knowledge is power. If we have that understanding and the mentality to see what is wrong and what we have done to our earth shouldn't be, then we have the capacity to move forward. In terms of environmental programs, I think we need promotional advertisements that creates energy and excitement for people, bringing a sense of participation in achievements through compositions across villages, groups of families to submit plans to preserving water, plants, trees, and managing waste. I'd like to share with you what one youth has said, that environmental programs, advertisements, and so forth is so bland. There is no excitement there for the young people. This is from the perspective of youth. So we need to push that up to create the passion, the understanding of the consequences of being unknowledgeable to areas that we need to address.
Thank you. For your input and lastly, Tuatangaloa, would you like to close off this session with your final words of wisdom? Can you unmute? Tuatanga, can you unmute your mic, please? Unmute, yeah. Sorry, we can't hear you.
You're muted.
You're muted. Just click the unmute and click on the mic.
But it says unmute.
Unmute, just unmute. Yeah, okay, now you can.
No, yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Maru
Yeah.
Mato e mamau tua. E whare masangi nei mea.
Yeah, so no, yeah.
Hands on, like a mayor.
My mind keeps going. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
My mind keeps going back to the point that I made earlier as an analogy for Lele. If you are Olesia, Samoa, if you are Tapari, Ofina, Wamurima. And another term that as a horseman, you can take a horse to water, but if it doesn't want to drink, that's the way it is.
Can't make it drink.
You can belt it on the back till it dies, but it won't drink. And so often I make this statement because, particularly in the groups that I get involved with, because it's so frustrating. You can talk to it till you're blue in the face about something that you firmly believe is the right path to take or the right thing to do or whatever. But no, it's like water on a duck's back. The thing is, and again, I know that I'm sure that when you say your prayers each day, that you pray for those who don't have water, those who don't have food to eat, and thank God for the blessings that we have here in Samoa and for the rest of the world who enjoy these luxuries. There's so much that we take for granted, and I think, so these are the realities, and this is why we're not trying to survive here in Samoa. We have just about, in terms of the natural the environment, there's so much that we can do with our land to grow and all that sort of thing. I just feel that sure we need help from afar and from our neighbors. We do to if I can the projects that we need to put in place to get the message across, to awareness programs, but it has to serve a purpose, and the purpose, in my view, is one, it's got to be sustainable, so that 5 years from now we're not got our hands out again to the same people asking them to please help us because with this same problem, because we haven't made any progress. So sustainability is very, very important in my view. That's certainly not right now because of the difficulties that COVID has put us into in our businesses, in our lifestyles, and all the rest of it. We need help. We certainly need help. What help? Well, I think Sua and Leataua, can better speak to that because they're the ones that I go to. I get secondhand help. But for it's got to be sustained. It's got to be for a project that's going to sustain us and make us better people and give us a better environment so that we can live healthier lives and so on and so forth. So, so that's how I see it, Mayava, and the rest of our group that's sharing this very special afternoon together. There's so many aspects to it that one cannot in 2 hours, but at least we've touched on some of the very important aspects of the challenges that we have today, brought about by the COVID, and about other factors, that are affecting our environment. Sorry to have probably complicated things a little bit more with my rather for a little lengthy explanations, but it's I'd just like to, in closing, thank you, Mayava, and of course and UNDP and the whole initiative to bring some of us together to share our experiences and to try and bring some some light onto the issues as they really are. Thank you very much, Faftai.
For that meaningful contribution and words of wisdom. Well, before we open the floor for Q&A, I have a final question for all three of you kind speakers. It's a very simple one, so put your thinking cap on, and I'll ask the final question for you three. What kind of follow-up activities would you like to see from Stockholm+50? What kind of follow-up activities would you like to see from this Stockholm+50?
I think going forward, I would like to see more international interaction, to keep this forum alive, because most times we go to big conferences, and then the question that always comes up is, what now? What now? And looking forward now, I'd like to see more interaction, even amongst nations, even within the region. I'd like to see more and more groups coming up with solutions, coming up with answers, so we can put it together and help develop an overall, an overall solution or answer to some of these problems. But, I saw also there was a mention of going forward for partnerships. I would bring that into forums for the future, because that's where strength comes in all that we do. If the partnerships are strong, then you develop a very good going forward program so that there's a good understanding, there's a good cooperation, and most of all, together we can provide hope. We can bring hope into lives of so many people when so many groups can partner and go forward. First time.
Okay. Would you like to add to what you said on this? What kind of follow-up activities would you like to see from Stockholm+50?
Yeah, well, thank you. Could I just ask the question? What sort of help could be forthcoming? You know, from that side, from your side, or from the Stockholm side. You know, what sort of assistance could be considered? That way, is that possible to get an answer to that question from Molmole Mayava?
Yes, about I think based on all the feedback and the knowledge sharing put together from this consultation, I think at the end of the Stockholm+50 workshop in June, we'll probably be looking at more funding coming our way. So I think we can say that you can look at it that way, that based on the feedback and knowledge sharing from these sessions, we're in a good chance to get more funding or international assistance from donor partners or countries that are in the UN that contribute financial funding to the UN. So,
yeah.
I mean, an example of follow-up activities would be in terms of economic growth. How can the UN help Samoa in the COVID-19 situation that we're in? How can the UN ensure we have peace in our country? And can they bring more environmental assistance? So that you can look at it that way, Tuata.
Okay.
I hope this.
No, that's helpful, Maya. But no, when my experience or limited experience with applying or asking for assistance, you know, for different projects, the number of hurdles that one has to jump and the difficulty in getting it for there are. So, and sometimes I wish that, you know, that process was made a little easier for some of us that haven't had too much education. It gets very, it's not easy. So if that could be simplified a little bit more, if it's, you know, but certainly, you know, the financial help from over, you know, from offshore would be a big help to all communities. But again, it's one thing to ask, it's one thing to receive, but the other thing is to make good, proper, decent use of those funds, and you know, and communities be held accountable for the proper use of those funds, and making sure that the money has gone to, you know, to the project that they were earmarked for. Accountability, I suppose, is the word that embraces all of those things. Very, very important in things like this. This is hard-earned money from other countries. You know, they've had to work for it, and now they're giving it to us. So it's, you know, it's our duty to make good use of that help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tuata. So before we end this session, since we don't have any Q&A questions, I would like to take this opportunity to express our sincere thanks and gratitude to the three speakers on behalf of the UNDP RESREP and management. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and wisdom and the thoughtful experience of Taitele Lava. Sua, Te Ataua and Tuatangaloa. We understand you have very busy schedules, but you have made time to be with us today. We also want to thank our NOLA representative, Sunga Noe, for being here today, and we're very grateful for your assistance. We hope that today's discussion and consultation has inspired you to continue to work with us and be partners in development of our country. And if you're inspired today, we would like to share, and if you would like to share your opinions about the state of the world's progress towards a sustainable planet, you can do so by registering on the Spark Blue page and answering as many questions as you would like to see under the 3 leadership dialogues. You can also access the recording of this webinar on the Spark Blue page. This link is in the chat, or we can send it to you. Again, thank you once again for joining us today. We wish you a wonderful Mother's Day weekend, and may God bless you all. Whaftai te lau.
Bye.
Thank you. Okay. Sua, la foto.
The Pale, please, sorry, before we end, I would like to ask the Pale to officially close our session today. Thank you, the Pale.
Yeah. Whamalo whaftai, tō whionga, teinane foile, i tato lau funu. I will not draw this further. My colleague Lino Mayava has touched upon everything that we wanted to say and we wanted to convey. Thank you so much to our panel. Whaftai lau whionga Tuatangaloa, whaftai lau whionga le atau sa, whaftai lau sumasua, mo le whaasoa i le nei fiafi. Hearing the discussions, I think my colleagues would agree, it relates and touches every aspect of the community and our lives. So it was an informative, but at the same time, a fun session. So thank you for that positive vibe and for allowing to stay with us in this 2 hours. Yeah, toi whapopo atu I leo se whamtalanga, ia manuia telele, le anga ia tu lau sautina, manuia telele ni weekend, yeah, so ifu ia, le nanga whalua lava, whaftai.
Bye.
Yeah, faz eu vou.
Amaro,
So, yeah.
Whaftai.
After